Which Lowry will admit it too. I think he will. The amazing editor of the National Review. Richard, good morning. How are you, buddy?
Good. Yeah, you are always right.
Crazy, right?
I know.
You know what it is? I'm being serious.
How do you do it?
You know what it is?
Can I get some of this magic?
It's not magic. and I know we're kind of kidding around, but the truth is, part of the reason why I am often right, it's all instinctual. You know, people love the common sense. A lot of it is that. Mm-hmm. You know, it's just, I don't need to know all the minutia, every intricacy of every story out there, but I've got great instincts and common sense. You'd be surprised how many times you end up right. You got to remove the partisanship, which for me is always very difficult because I am very partisan. But it's not that difficult, is it, Rich?
I can't say you're wrong, and I wouldn't say you're wrong because you're always right.
There he goes. That's why I love Rich Lowry. Well, I'll tell you what, all kidding aside, I've been right all along about the Iran war, have I not?
Yeah, so right in that you're like, he's stuck and we can't get out of this, even though I support the goals?
Correct, 100%. And while people were celebrating, we won, we already won, talking about economic indicators and all that nonsense.
And the deal was BS, yeah. You're right about that.
Yeah.
Too.
So where are we with this conflict?
It looks like he's preparing just to hit him real hard again. My take, it's hard to come out with something we're going to be happy with unless you reopen reliably the Strait of Hormuz by force. I think if you hit him really hard, bomb bridges or whatnot, you might get him on another fake deal, but you're never going to get them to loosen their grip on the strait unless you take it from them. And the problem is, it's hard. It's going to be protracted. It could be a years-long operation, or a stretch into next year, or whatever it is. And the president's not interested in that. That's not what he signed up for. But he's staring in the face the other option, which is like a BS MOU that basically de facto gives them control of the strait, and he doesn't like that either. So I think it's a tough situation. I do think it's going to hit him and see what happens.
The other thing is we keep talking about no regime change. It's not our job. And it's not just about the Strait of Hormuz. I'm sorry. And it's even less about getting the dust, which really, if we're going to have an honest conversation, is almost impossible. It really is. Unless we start putting boots on the ground. And
you got to invade the place.
Right,
do that.
You got to invade the place.
If you do that, you might as well topple the regime.
Bang. That is the only way to victory, which is wipe out the IRGC, or at least really cripple them, and there has to be regime change. You don't win this conflict just by opening the Strait of Hormuz. That's crazy. I've said all along, once you started this and blew up all those guys on that Saturday morning, Operation Epic Fury, there has to be regime change, or nothing changes in 10 years. What's so hard to figure out?
Yeah, so we could topple the government in a week if we wanted to, right? We have massive power. But are we really going to, launch a major ground invasion of Iran? We're going to lose probably hundreds of guys. And there may be an insurgency afterwards because the IRGC will just kind of fade away and become a terrorist force like Hamas, and then you're into a war of counterinsurgency, and then you're into what Trump's allies have called forever wars, or Trump himself has called a forever war. So I just don't think there's the appetite for that. I don't think there's a consensus in the country for that, and I don't think we're going to do that. So you're right, that wins the war, but he's not going to do that. So you're left with these kind of less maximal options that are less likely to deliver the result you want.
That don't win the war, bottom line.
Correct.
Yeah.
I've been thinking a lot about Rome, in the ancient world because of it's a Greek story, but because of the Odyssey and other things. And the thing is, the Romans, they'd lose battles. They'd lose terrible battles. They get humiliated, and emperors would get captured and killed. They'd lose a dozen legions, and they'd always win the war because they'd always come back. They're always completely determined. They always have massive forces. We never lose a battle. We haven't lost a battle since World War II, but we lose wars. And we lose wars like in Vietnam and arguably Iraq and Afghanistan because we have the massive forces. So if you have a straight-up shooting battle, we're going to win it. But the other side has more staying power, and we have less. And that's how they win the war. So that's the situation we may be looking at here, or at least that's the asymmetrical advantage the Iranians have, is they're fanatics who aren't going anywhere and can absorb massive punishment. And we have a limit to our pain threshold.
And they can deliver punishment, too, because, while Pete Hegseth, I don't think is being completely honest about our munitions, talked about this yesterday with Solomon. He agreed Iran has a lot more weaponry than we're telling our people. Why? Yes. China, Russia, these countries are providing the Iranians with weaponry. How do we know? We find it. It's got the country's name on it or the numbers, whatever it may be. So they're not running out of weaponry anytime soon.
Yeah, so they have less than they did, but it's never going to go to zero. And the other thing is governments, people often accuse the governments of lying during warfare and times of war, and they do, but oftentimes they also just fool themselves. So I think we're just putting the rosy numbers on how much we've destroyed because that's what we want to believe. And, you're an intelligence analyst and you look at a hit and you kind of squint the right way and you're like, okay, that one's done. But actually it's just the bunker was hit and the missile's still there and you can dig it out. So I think that kind of thing is going on as well.
You and I didn't talk. You were on the show earlier last week. We haven't talked since the J.D. Vance interview with Joe Rogan. I think you know how I feel about J.D. Vance. I'm not going to go over it again. I'm bored of it. What were your thoughts on that awful interview?
Well, we did talk about, blaming an Israeli influence campaign for undermining the MOU, which was crazy. But look, the guy is incredibly talented. He's very glib. I don't think he's ever done a bad interview. I think he'd come on with you and charm you and
he won't come on with me
and never be cornered.
He won't come on with me.
He's not going to come on with you. But if he did, he would. So, and I think that's true of the Rogan interview. And there was one thing relevant to the Iran debate that kind of set off a little light bulb in my head. He said, you know what, Joe? If you went to Iraq near the Strait of Hormuz and you bought a couple commercial drones and put, firecrackers on them, you could close the Strait of Hormuz for some period of time because all you have to do is create some level of risk for those ships, like one guy. Now we'd hit Joe Rogan if he did that, right? And the threat would be eliminated. But you multiply that thousands of times over, and it just gets to how hard it is to reopen it in such a way that insurance companies are going to insure people at a reasonable level and commercial shippers are going to go through. Because none of these guys signed up for military operations, right? They just signed up to be on a tanker, on a slow-moving tanker for a couple months, or whatever it is.
It's true, you're right. Do you believe, Lowry, as a New Yorker, what's going on in this city with this mayor?
I do, yeah, and you're right about that, too. And by the way, almost everything you've been right about, I've encouraged you to be right about over time and said that you're right. When everyone's like meeting with Mamdani and saying he's so reasonable and what a charming
he's a smart guy.
Like, no.
He went to Brooklyn Tech. No, he's not. He's a scumbag. That's what he is.
Yeah, and I from day one I said stick to your guns. So, look, the potential upside to Mamdani is if he's just giving speeches about arresting Bibi Netanyahu and not doing anything else, that's the city dodging a bullet. The thing is he's imposing his agenda and doing these crazy things that get to his fervent anti-Zionism. And these people, I wasn't aware of this, but the DSA was founded by a guy named Michael Harrington, who is a kind of a good old-fashioned socialist. He wasn't an identity politics guy. He hated communists. And there was a provision in the DSA charter or whatever it is saying if you're a communist, you can't be a member of this organization. But what happened, the communists all came in the last couple of years and repealed that provision and chased out all the people who were kind of Michael Harrington types. So what's happened is the DSA is infiltrating and trying to take over the Democratic Party. At the same time, the DSA has literally been infiltrated and taken over by communists. It's really bad.
Unbelievable. Yeah. Did you see the story today, too, going back to Trump for a second, that the Secret Service has now probed over 10,000 what they perceive to be legitimate threats, 10,000 to Trump's life?
Yeah, it's amazing but not surprising. I mean, if they have any opening to do it, they will try, and that's what we've seen with the Secret Service lapses, in Butler and on the golf course there. at the hotel during the White House Correspondents' Dinner. It's a little bit like Russia during the time of the czars. You just had these crazy people, these anarchists who loved throwing bombs, and they were just determined to kill the czar, and eventually they did it.
That's true. Talking about that White House Correspondents' Dinner, they decided to reschedule it. Believe it or not, it comes your way tomorrow night. How about that, Rich?
I haven't focused on that.
Yeah, right. That's tomorrow night. One last thing. Trump has done very, very well with his candidates, excluding the communists that continue to win here in New York and around the country. But it was nice to see the former NFL kicker, he's a friend of mine too, Jay Feely, win out there in Arizona. And a lot of people are saying that seat in Arizona may very well determine who wins the House. That was a big win for Trump a couple of days ago, yes?
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing better in Republican politics than getting endorsed by Trump in a competitive primary. It doesn't 100% work out for you, but it works out for you very often. I love former athletes. Mark Teixeira, our friend, is
Texas.
Coming to Congress from Texas. Yeah. So, again, I think the Republicans are losing the House, and I think the Senate could be a near-run thing.
Well, you think the Democrats take the House, and you think the Senate is what?
I think the Senate is in play. I think Democrats will win the House, and the Senate is in play. Now it's tough for them because they got to win a lot of red states. They got to take a Texas, an Ohio, and an Iowa, and Alaska. So I don't think they'll do it, but I think there's definitely some significant chance they do it.
So if you're right, in essence, President Trump's presidency ends in November. Because at that point, he'll be impeached every day. What do you mean, no? They're going to impeach him every single day. He's not going to get anything done. Done.
But is he really going to? So much of what he's done unilaterally. It's not as though he's governing through Congress, right? So I think he'll keep doing the foreign affairs stuff, keep doing the executive actions, but he's getting impeached a third time, no doubt. And everyone's getting subpoenaed.
Everybody, right?
Yep, they may subpoena you, Sid. So, be careful.
If I was them, I certainly would. I got to tell you that. I certainly would. Rich, as always, amazing job. We love having you on every week. We love you, Rich Lowry. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Sid.
All right, my man, right there, the editor of the National Review. He's so smart. Great guy, too. Rich Lowry, right here on Sid and Friends in the Morning.
Thanks for listening to Sid and Friends in the Morning. You can hear Sid and Friends in the Morning weekday mornings at 6. If you like the podcast, share it with your friends and listen anytime at WABCRadio.com and download the WABC Radio app. Hit that subscribe button on all major podcast platforms. Plus, follow WABC on social on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and X. See you next time for a new episode so you never have to wonder.
What the heck is going on here?